Hello everybody and welcome. So this is the walkthrough to configure macOS Leopard Server. In my opinion, Leopard Server was the latest great macOS server. After the 10.5 release, Apple started cutting features, reducing support, and so on. Here, I need this release just because I need a modem, right, to review my Windows CE devices. But since I'm here, I'm going to document the first run, and just like I did with macOS 9, and that turned to be a very popular video. So for future generations to see how actually Apple made much easier to maintain an advanced server. So here the first question is how I want to configure my server. And let's see, a simplified configuration ideal for standalone servers, Workgroup, or advanced. Let's see if I can go back and forth so I can actually cover all options. If I go continue, go to keyboard options, Workgroup. So let me see. I see here. So it shows down there what options will be installed. So standard, I get file sharing, calendar, IAM, remote access, web, mail, and backup. In Workgroup, I don't have remote access, and what else I don't have? Remote access and mail. And advanced, the flexible configuration, and this has more options, so this is what I'm going to choose. And I know that Apple made it very simple at the time to configure quite complex functionalities such as clustering and podcasting. So let's see what the assistant has to offer. Keyboard layout, US is fine. So I've just skipped the registration blah blah blah. And after that you get the administrator account set up. I already entered my username and password. I will click continue. I got a network setup information provided by my DHCP server. I'll keep that for now, but after I'm done configuring, I will create a new VLAN for the server because I want to see how it behaves as a DHCP server, DNS, and etc. Network name, so this will be known as g4.mydomain. Now call it G4. Yes, I will use remote management. It should work with VNC. That will be very useful because I'm not going to always be on my knees in front of my TV. Let's click continue. I happen to be in Europe, so let's just put Prague. Next. Store user account, so will be a standalone server. I can be an Open Directory master or replica. Here I'll be connected, so I don't have a directory service yet, so let's go as a standalone server. I do next. I can quickly review the configuration here. Everything should be good. So I'll click apply, and my server is being configured. Well, we have a problem over here. The backend 2 as a proxy crashed please quit server assistance or restart in 9 seconds. So can I quit? I cannot quit this. So we need to restart. So let's let it restart. And I'm back to the beginning of assistant. What's going on? Let's try to quit. Continue. Maybe I disconnected from the network. Oh, spinning beach ball is on the screen. Nothing is happening. Oh, it's switching off. I'll disconnect the network. Maybe it's trying to do something. Lebong. Oh, maybe it's just a bug. I am logged in. It didn't ask if I wanted to save the password. Straight to the main screen. So, first step for me, because I really can't live with the dock like this, so let me close my home folder, come down here, position the screen left, and I get a server admin screen. Let's see what kind of data I get here. This looks so cool. The server does not have any service marked as configured. Let's see, choose configured services. Well, wow, a lot of stuff here. Well, I indeed have not configured anything. So let's see the drop down menu. So I think whatever I click here is going to show up here eventually. Well, let's go through the first run. Yeah, it's indeed a G4 dual 867 megahertz PowerPC G4. It's rounding up to 0.9. Machine serial number 1.75 megs of RAM, 16 GB of hard drive, unlimited client license, booting from Macintosh HDD on Darwin 9 kernel. Here's the CPU usage and network throughput for the last 4 hours. It's very cool that I can choose here time frame of the chart. So let's do 1 hour because it's not going to be up for so long. Connect to network back. I can see the throughput of all disks. So if I have a RAID card or more disk, that will show up here. If I go to logs, I get, so that's probably the output from the system messages. Yeah, it seems to be. From secure log, I don't know what is here. Probably services that are authenticated, probably users as well. Software update log is going to show the software update logs. And afterward, of course, I'm going to install patches to make sure that this system is safe. Graphs. You can monitor CPU usage or network traffic, nothing more. File sharing. Here you can probably choose volumes. You can create user quotas, maybe not on the root disk. And here is, well, classic Unix permissions for user, group, or others. You can also use ACLs. I don't know why I can't change this, but probably I need to figure out why I can't. You can auto-mount a volume, so that's easy to configure. You can enable spotlight search. You can have a volume and mark it as a time machine destination. And by browsing a folder, then you can't. Well, I'll figure this out later. I'm not going to use file sharing anyway. So let's go to server updates. I find unlikely that everything's up to date, so let's see what kind of updates I can get for this if the servers are still online. In any case, I can update. I have them all downloaded, so I don't need to go through this. I'm not going to touch the updates now, only when I'm ready to start testing, because I want to document the out-of-box experience. So I get 1 gig server update combined, wikis, blogs, Spotlight, Finder, welcome mail, to user service, DHCP, DNS, SNMP updates, software update server, resolving issues, so bunch of issues. Has a self-signed certificate created here during boot, and the settings will show the services I want to configure on the server. Now here you can add server or group. You can probably create smart groups based on filters, which is really cool. Apple really had a good server operating system, even though the performance was not great. I'm sad that they didn't keep it. You can remove the server or disconnect. I actually maybe will install this on my 1.1 Mac Pro because I can get a RAID card. It's a much more powerful system. It could be a great server, even though software this old I'll not have online anyway. Alright, for now I'm going to hide server admin, and let's go through the rest of the system. So what do we get? After closing the server admin page, you have a classic Mac experience. If you go to the top left hand side, go to About This Mac, you see that I'm running OS 10 server 10.5. Is a 2867 G4 with 1 meg of L3 cache and 1.75 gigs of RAM. If you go to more info, this is the most bare bones machine you can get. Yeah, I had a fully set G4 and I kept this one. Should have done the opposite. The SATA to parallel ATA adapter, and the CD drive is not a super drive. The standard audio chip, no Bluetooth, diagnostics are clear. It's a combo drive, not a super drive. No fiber channel, Firewall 400 with the GeForce 4MX, and I think that was the cheapest, slowest card you could get. No hardware RAID. 3 512 megabytes memory sticks and 1256. No ECC, of course, it's a G4. No PC cards, no PCI cards, no parallel SCSI, no printers, no SAS, no serial 8 USB 1.1. Here you have airport, nothing. Firewall is totally open and this is so bad. Location, so we have a DHCP set here, and the reason why I'm using this computer now, the internal modem goes on the USB bus, and B92 because it's the latest. My volumes, so auto mount for home, for the net, and for the service. Here in applications, they are all universal binaries, I think. Yeah, Apple didn't ship this version of macOS There's a desktop DB from Classic. I don't even know why it installs this. But yeah, so at this point, Apple is fully ready for Intel. What extensions do we have? All the legacy drivers are here, so you should be able to boot this on any machine from 2002 to 2006, 7 should be able to boot. Comes with some fonts, of course. Frameworks. Well, this doesn't matter so much, so let them just spare you of this. Create a system profile. The next application in the dock is Safari. That should not open anything properly anymore. It won't accept the certificate. Let's see what happens if you try to load. Incredibly enough, it works. A bit broken, but does the job. Let's try YouTube. My browser is not supported, great. Wikipedia should load. No, it doesn't. And I think RSS doesn't work. It still works. Let's see RSS feeds. News, RSS articles. Let's try to see if it uploads. Well, yeah, doesn't work. So let's quit Safari for now. The next program in the dock is a server monitor. And I think if you're managing lots of servers, you have this really cool built-in application. So I see I can probably do localhost. Maybe 127.0.0.1, and I enter my credentials. Let's see if I get a response if it works like this. If you're managing X servers, you can light up the sysidentifier light. I was hoping this would work. It doesn't. I probably need to use FQDN or something like that. It's really cool that you probably can manage a lot of servers and use search bar here, and I'm sure that Apple has it very well done compared to other companies in terms of user interface and experience. Although these days, I think managing physical servers is something that is very demodé. I don't think, while Apple had OS X server, they never embraced the containerization or virtualization. So this is really the old model where you had a machine dedicated to some specific service, and for this situation it would be perfect to manage it here. Server admin is what we're looking into before. Workgroup manager. Here is probably what I can do to manage my users in Open Directory. Let's see if this works. So my node is not visible to the network. That is fine. So I can probably create users here normally instead of using system preferences. You get here a list of users with the UID, so it's Unix style. So we have the groups, UID as well, the GID I mean. And you can manage computers, create computer accounts. So let's see. Choose my user. So I can see that there is no mail for me, no print quota. Old days where people would print and probably could here limit how many pages someone can print if you are sharing the printer through the server. You can create a preset. In advanced, you get calendaring and you can point the user to some calendar server probably. That's really cool that you can track to how many servers or computers are managed. You are logged in, and if you can change your shell. It's really handy, and these days you have to do this all very manually. Create a shadow password. What do we have in security? Wow, LAN manager. I totally wouldn't use that, or that, or that. This is crazy. This is really old school. Any options? You can allow login on specific dates, lock the account automatically. This is really cool. You can create keywords and comment on them, like that's probably to make it easier to find the users. Not sure you can attach policies to keywords. I have zero experience with OS 10 server. Groups. So user can belong to many groups, and you can see the group IDs here. You can track inherited groups here. Really, really useful. In Active Directory, this can become very chaotic. That's really nice. For example, you can automatically repoint user folders somewhere else, to, for example, a NAS. So when the user logs into a computer for the first time, the documents are all stored remotely. And I'm sure there are utilities these days to manage that, and I know I've done it manually on Linux, but it's very painful, and this was super easy. Create a disk quota. These days you'd probably need some terabyte option here. Mail. You can use a local mail server if you need. Create a partition. Print quota. You can limit pages per day or per queue. So you can probably create some different queues by department, for example, and define how many pages a user can print. This was probably relevant in the past, and by the time Apple made it easy to use, printing was already in decline. Info, that's just a normal business card, like the contact information. So you can manage your Active Directory from macOS using my Open Directory and create domain accounts here. It's pretty cool, to be honest. Now if we go to groups, let's not save these changes. Create a guest login group, give it a name. You can choose the services that the group can use. Mailing, weekend blog, web calendar. Very easy to manage. This would be so handy these days if you just could make it, cloud native. This admin interface is brilliant. You can see the members of the group, and you can create a group for the folder, or actually a folder for the group. And you can point to a different server using AFP. Apple doesn't even support this anymore at all, not even as a legacy option. It would be nice if you could use NFS. Is it supported? Probably not. AFP. AFP lets me do OKS, so can we use SMB? Yeah, it supports SMB, so it's not completely useless. I may create a lab network here, legacy Mac network, and get another Mac just to play around. Alright, no saving changes. Here you can create computer accounts, probably. I think once you add them to the domain, this list should populate automatically. And computer groups. In preferences, let's see, if I go here to my user, so I can create a set of preferences like a policy, but far simpler and probably easier to use. But not for sure as powerful as Microsoft's group policies in Active Directory, but you can see here you can see applications. So you can allow users to access specific applications or not. Dashboard was a thing, and you could choose what widgets to use, and you probably could create your own widget for your company. I actually really like Dashboard, and I'm still on Mojave, and I use them often. Front row was Apple's remote control interface that you could use on Apple Intel Macs with remote control, and you could browse pictures and music. I don't know why I would block this, but here we are, probably for a computer that sits in a lobby or something. Legacy. Account for Macs running older versions of macOS. Probably a more complicated way of setting policies. Let's see if I go to expose. So you can be using a whitelist or blacklist model. You can allow or disallow the Unix tools. Don't want any of this, so let's revert. Very, very, very cool. You can create a new window probably to manage many resources at the same time. Awesome. Manage remote users. Let's quit Workgroup Manager. Next, you have the system image utility, and I think this is something that I would find awesome these days. So what's new? Yeah, you can create NetBoot images, so this is great, and I've used it a few times. You can just plug the computer, turn it on, and it's going to fetch the installer or even a pre-configured image from the network. And I don't know how you mass deploy Apple Computer these days. You can use Automator, a tool that I hope Apple doesn't discontinue. It supports Bootcamp as well. And that's super cool because you could just push Windows and macOS to your portable Macs and have your workforce ready to run really happily. So you can create a net install image from a DVD or from a partition. Yeah, so if you use this option, you're installing a machine. And NetBoot, for example, schools used to use this a lot. Yeah, the computer has not installed locally, and I think you can even bypass a hard drive. I'm going to try this someday and document down in the future because I have too many projects on the pipeline. With a NetBoot image, you can have even no hard drive. I think like a bunch of iBooks, they boot from wireless, and you can use the computer. So let's net install image. For example, I can deploy servers automatically like this. Yeah, so I can just do create, agree, I can create it on the desktop, save. The password is in, and it's created a net install image. The next option here is a directory utility, and this was used to, I don't really remember, let's see. So you can easily mount remote NFS volumes. You can configure some services and edit their settings. So you can look for ODAP services via DHCP, and I think if you go to Active Directory and enable it, you can join a domain with your computer and configure settings for default shell, your account, and so you can join a Microsoft domain with this computer. LDAP3 is enabled by default. Local is always enabled, so those are just the local usernames. Yes, the flat file NIS, so NIS is the basic Unix authentication, and not very used anymore, I think. Search policy, so you can give paths to where to search domain information, and also contacts, and I think so you drag Active Directory from here, open directory SSL if you wish, and once you're here I think you can look up for users. You can enable the root user, change password here. You can search for MySQL servers, and that's probably just a network broadcast. And help. Actually, the help used to be very useful on this old version. So you see, you can actually get proper information without having to go to the internet. So even probably here in the Workgroup Manager, if you look properly and open help, you get a proper helpful configuration information that shows you what to do and what options are supposed to do, and etc. And actually, let's go back here because I forgot to go through the rest. So in Classic, you can activate or block Classic. Let's go back to Preferences, Doc. That's cool. If you're creating a company image, you can choose what applications you have in the dock, and if you want to put some folders and documents there as well, you can. You can choose where to place the dock or not. This can sound very dictatorial, but when you're handling lots of support calls, it's nice that things are where you expect them to be. Find the preferences. I didn't know the Simple Finder was a thing anymore, so with Simple Finder you have less options, you hide the configuration, you show what people see on the desktop. You can, for example, if you're allowing remote access to service, you can block shutdown, you can block burning disks so you will not steal data, even icon sizes. Basically, a lot of what you would do with group policies you can do here. Of course, not so deep, but login options cannot be done for users, probably for groups. Let's see. Let's use this as group login. So then you can choose front. I don't know. Media access. You can ask for authentication to load removable media, and that's really cool that you can block USB disks, and that's very helpful to avoid data leaks in your company. And I think with Windows up to very recently you needed third-party applications to be able to do this. Mobility. I'm not sure what mobile accounts do. I think they automatically synchronize the user folders. You can force encryption, very cool, and you can create a master password for the computer so you can retrieve the data. You can restrict the size of the network folder so it's easy to manage the users. It's really cool. I really would like to be able to do this at home without needing Windows Server or without having to dig into millions of configuration files in Linux. This is excellent. I wish it was not so outdated. Network. Here you can push configuration of network services. enforce proxies. Let's see. I think interfaces will be only for computers. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so for computers, here you can force people to enter the username in a text way, enable or disable fast user switching, enable external guest accounts. You can create ACL, so only certain users can log into certain computers. You can force scripts to run once someone logs in, and so on. In parental controls, you can hide profanity in dictionary, try to limit access to adult sites. You can always allow or disallow certain URLs, and you can impose time limits so people don't use their computers for too long. In printing, you can choose which printers are available to each user or computer, right? Depending on what you're configuring. You can require passwords to print if you wish. Software update. You can point all computers to use an internal server instead of going to the internet, and when you are more starved for bandwidth, that's a super feature to have. System preferences. You can choose what users can see in their preferences pane. And universal access. You can enable or disable Zoom, enable or disable hearing aids, so you could do that for like a certain group of users, for example, right? So glasses users, you could make things bigger. Yeah. Basically, everything that the universal access pane gives you. And let's see. Aha, and here you probably can add other applications and configure them remotely. So let's see, Safari. Yeah, you can find, so applications that are configured using plist files, you can actually go through them and configure them. That would be amazing. It offers a standard way, better than the Windows registry, I think, for you to configure applications. Brilliant, really. Alright, next we have the terminal. This probably is vulnerable to shell shock and everything else, but well, as this is a server, terminal is by default on the dock, and the preferences are the same as always. Some of the same color schema. What is the pro color schema? Aha, like this. Anyway, nothing special. Support Unicode, no emoticons. Let's see, it supports. You can pick up the processes that flag that there's something important run. You can run commands on startup. You can create new windows with different color schema. You get a professional one. You get homebrew, my favorite. You get red sands. Oh, it's a horrible cursor. Anyway, terminal does a terminal job. Then system preferences. Interestingly enough, all the server applications are not related to the system preferences. So here, there is nothing, absolutely nothing beyond your usual macOS workstation setup configuration. Nothing at all. Even in accounts, if you want to just use that instead of the manager, server manager, you can. Sharing works. They are missing things here because I think they are managed through the server application. That is probably the only change. And I'm gonna have to install updates because here you cannot disable the stupid stacks view, and that came in a .update that I don't have installed yet, so I'll get to that soon. If we go to help, then we get the same classic macOS help. There is nothing server related here. I think all the server related functions are part of the server admin help session. So you see, you have information about certificates, the identities, not very deep though. I would expect a bit more. System planning. I may read through this because some things are kind of timeless. And it's kind of a nice question to ask, you know, if you would read this through, you'd be like a small company growing that has a very tech-savvy person who will then read through these and do a quite decent job in preparing a good infrastructure. And if they're careful enough, even for the standards of the era, secure. It's really cool. I miss this kind of documentation, to be honest. And going through this, even now, you know, I've been working with AWS and cloud. It's good to review this basic concept. It refreshes your mind, and it's nice to you know, review the concepts, and also makes for a good overall good. Oh my god, I'm speaking rubbish. Generalistic IT education. I already consider a few things here I'm actually not going to be able to try because, for example, we're not going to be able to do NAT because I have only one network interface. I'm not going to be able to do probably DHCP not, DNS not, and I'm not going to buy a PCI network card just for this. I may actually later on plug this hard drive to the Mac Pro with two network interfaces to try what I cannot show on the G4. Yeah. The loads folder has that classic PDF explaining what the loads folder is for. I find it so cute that Apple used to include this kind of very thorough education. Even though these icons are horrible, they don't have contrast like the ones in 10.4 Tiger. Server admin page, you have RAID admin. And this is if you have an internal hardware card, or if you have, you know, an Xserve RAID connected. Actually, it's only for the Xserve RAID. I'm still very keen to getting my hands into one of these, just for the sake of experimenting and documenting. and then modifying it to run something modern. Or maybe even, since it supports fiber channel, you can even connect it to a server and use FreeNAS if you can pass through the disks without any, just as JBOD without any extra, like for the system interface directly with the drivers, not having to go through any kind of controller. Wow, this page is still online. This is impressive. I may document it another time because it's not going to be up for so long. Someone in Apple for sure forgot that this exists. But this is excellent. Very, very cool. Funny though that they use this online help instead of the standard built-in help. But this is really crazy. They have forgotten that this is there. Well, let's leave RAID admin and go to server admin we already saw. Server assistant is what runs in the beginning. Right. You can save. You can create a configuration here to run offline if you need. Server monitor we already saw. Server preferences is the... what is this? Aha! So there is a system preferences screen tailored for servers. Let's see what it can do. This is sad because I would like to see this. Probably easier to manage than the other interface. Okay, too bad. We're not gonna have these guys. System image utility we already saw. Workgroup manager already saw. Xgrid admin. So if you have fiber channel and Ethernet, you can actually connect via Ethernet to, like TCP/IP, to an XM controller, I think. No, that's not that's Xgrid. So actually, this used to be excellent, and it breaks my heart that Apple stopped supporting this. So basically, you could very easily create clusters. So for example, when we had this G5 cluster node when the CPU was actually cool, and then you can create distributed computing environments to just share CPU, so basically create supercomputers, and it was also a very simple way to schedule tasks in a distributed manner, to leverage CPU of idle computers or even dedicated number crunching clusters, Apple kept this for a while and then they stopped. Are you really gonna crash? Well, fun fact. After upgrading, or actually updating, I have a login screen. And the first and most important thing to be done here is to get rid of this disgrace. Whoever came with this idea is a complete idiot. Alright, so folder. It didn't come with a nice folder icon for our server. That's sad. Anyway, let's now have a look on the reason why we are here, and that will be the server admin tools. Alright, so as you see here, nothing has changed from earlier boot, well, besides the fact that it takes a while to populate. You can see that the chart here clears after rebooting. There is nothing earlier than half hour ago. Before we dig any further, let's have a look on the about this Mac. So now 10.5.8, and there might be a few security patches here, and they're still to be done. Let's have a look. I can let them run in the background. Maybe on the background. Sometimes my English fails me. Oh, there's a lot of stuff here. Well, and a few of them will ask for a reboot. They can run. I will not reboot now. Okay, I can hide this away. Thank you for hiding. And let's configure the services. Let's select them all. No, thank you very much. Okay, everything's enabled and I can get some options. Let's go first to AFP. So AFP is now deprecated. Actually, Big Sur doesn't support it at all. Apple Feeding Protocol. Back in the day, it used to be faster than Samba, but then Apple stopped developing it, so of course probably now Samba is better. But I used to have both running and copying from Mac servers. It just would be faster here, yeah. Bonjour registration, that's actually the MDNS service, and that's the zero-conf auto-discovery thing, and it basically broadcasts the information, so when you connect to the network, you see your server. And one thing that is interesting and I haven't seen before, a login greeting. I don't recall ever seeing a message when I mount AFP, so what I can do is I can try hello to Leopard Server, and when I try to connect from the Mac Pro, maybe I'll see this login message. And this is the kind of touch that usually only Apple has, and that is to not send the same greeting twice to the same user. So if you by any chance remount your mount, then, well, you don't get the message, yeah. And in Access, you can use standard authentication. That's probably plain text, Kerberos, and that's using a token, or any method. Let's see what standard is. I hope it's encrypted. Let's check help. AFP. Oh, authentication methods for Open Directory password. Let's see. No, that's not it. Let's go back. Well, whatever. So you can allow guest access, so you can mount without any credentials. And allowing the administrator to masquerade as any user is that, I'm not sure how it is implemented on the Mac, but on Windows, when you right click, you can click Run As and change user. Maximum connections here you can set, so you don't overload your server, yeah. Login, so here you can choose how much information you can keep, and that's for auditing purposes, and this is very good to have in a high security environment. And I actually should implement this to some of my servers. And you can archive the log as well, so it rotates. And in idle users, if you have someone mounting a share and this person doesn't do any activity, then you can disconnect the user and say goodbye. And I'll try this eventually. I'll probably in a few months build a full Mac server lab and explore this further. Do save, and that is it. Is the service running? No. So we do start AFP and you start running. Beautiful. Green, sign that everything is okay. Do I get the new graphs for that? No, but as you can see here, you have graphs specific to the service that you're selecting here and logs to the service that you're selecting here. And you can get a quick overview. And very interesting that you can see the throughput to see if you're saturating your network or your storage and how many connections you have. Good, lovely. DHCP I'm not gonna enable here to not screw up with my network. I will do that once I can create a new VLAN, and that's gonna probably run on my Mac Pro, right? So I have two interfaces and I can share internet and test everything. You get a log here, no clients. The subnet here, but that's my local network, right? I can configure all that here and do lookups. You can enable SSL, probably using old crypto by now. I have no familiarity with how NetBeals used to work, so I don't know. So this will be later. And I can actually disable the DHCP here because I'm not going to use it. And save. The second service is DNS. I'm also not going to enable it because there's no... It doesn't make any sense when you don't have anything connected, right? But you can get logs. You can configure the zones here, so you can add a master or a slave zone. I'm not necessarily sure how these work because I don't have much experience with DNS as infrastructure. But here you can use an alias to assign names to multiple services to the same main name. You can add a machine or create a service account here. Service account you're going to use, for example, if you are hosting an email service, for example, or pushing configuration to devices. Bonjour will allow clients to browse services, and wide area means that probably it crosses networks. Yeah, probably for each zone you're gonna get a Bonjour domain, and then users can find services, right? That goes for a very hands-off experience. So for example, if you are hosting a network for like let's say an university, right? Everyone is more or less experienced, and you just want to provide the services and don't need to do too much support, and you trust that there's no information leakage, or everything can be mostly open to a lot of people. They can find, and you're gonna configure the permissions properly. Then this could be great. Yeah, you can choose where you accept queries from. So for example, you can host an externally facing DNS server, right? You can forward requests to different services, and you can choose here your log level. So depending if you're troubleshooting, go to debug, but that depending on how large your network is, it's going to generate a lot of data. So you may go down a little bit and only go for notice or warnings as you run operations, or you get a call from someone complain, you switch debug or information, and then you troubleshoot. Yeah. The next service is the Firewall. There are here some network groups, so these are private subnets. And what happens here? You can create and rename IP groups, and you can choose what services you're going to allow. It's actually a pretty cool interface. I'm quite confident it doesn't do any deep packet inspection, but this is a very comprehensive list. When Apple supported iChat here, so you could even do multi-point video conferences using iChat. QuickTime Streaming server that used to be great as well, and Apple doesn't support anymore. PPTP you don't want to use anymore, it's insecure, but you could configure it here. Web cache, and that will be interesting to see how it works. I don't even know what Macintosh Manager is. This is for classic machines, maybe. Mobile account sync, Apple events. I'm on desktop MySQL, distributed compiler, so that's for Xcode. I don't know what Timbuktu is, but you know the Xgrid I mentioned before, SLAP, Microsoft domain server. Wow, who? Anyway, you have a list of services here pre-configured, and you can enable or disable if required. You can choose where to and from to create connectivity pairs. You can log aloud the 9 packets or only the general firewall log. You can choose how many packets to log. If you go to 0, you're going to be screwed in storage, depending how large your network is. In advanced, you can enable stealth mode, so instead of dropping packets, you just, instead of rejecting, you just silently drop, yeah. And that helps to, some say it protects your network, I'm not sure, but the option is here. You can create some more advanced rules here with allows and denies depending on, it looks like, I'm not sure what firewall engine is running this, but it's pretty customizable on the port level. You can see the active rules, what's going on here. So there are some things running, but no packets being transmitted. There is nothing connected to this computer. Ah, okay, IPFW. All right. It supports IPv6, although I don't see anything here on the web UI. Can I add IPv6? Probably not. Probably the user interface doesn't support it. The firewall is not running, and you can see number of matching packets, and also how many bytes are being processed, which is good to calculate your load, and maybe you want to decouple. Yeah, so here you would create a very monolithic server, basically a 1, 2, or 3 servers in high availability that would provide all the services to your users, right? And that's not how we run infrastructure these days, because, for example, if you would restart this, all the services are gone, and if you have an outage, you're screwed, yeah? But as the setup mentions, yeah, for small companies or someone who, for a home network, honestly, this is an excellent solution, yeah? So if you would have like 2 G5s or 2 old Mac Pros running at home, if you want to have your home business running, could run in parallel, high availability. I think most of the services would work. I'm not sure how Apple has this done, and I haven't seen how to create the clusters yet. But yeah, we can do a lot of things here, keep it more or less tight very easily. You can run FTP. You get your FTP log. There's a transfer log here. Can you see the other logs? Probably not. The charts for me are very useful to see where the peaks are in usage. And I miss Linux interface like this that you can use to analyze many things without too much trouble, yeah. You can see the name and the address of who's connected. And let's see, you can provide an admin email, disconnect after login failures to avoid brute force attack. You can choose the authentication method that you allow, the maximum of users. This is also very good in case you have capacity issues. You can create an anonymous access. You can enable anonymous access here. And I like it that you can allow less capacity to anonymous users. This is actually very cool if you're running old Macs. I guess it was the end of the transition period between Classic and macOS 10, and these options were probably useful for people running old specialized applications. If you think about that, 10.5 was the first macOS that could not run Classic applications, so for sure when this came, you still had machines running OS 9, yeah. You can create a welcome message, abandon message here. All good. You can create logs for uploads and downloads, which is cool if someone is messing up. This would be nice. All the FTP commands people are doing, that's not so good because you're going to see a lot of lists and so on. For anonymous user, you would probably log everything. And in advanced, you can create an FTP route, or you can allow the home directories via FTP. We can leave this like this, and I will enable the service actually. I can enable anonymous access. Let's start the FTP server. iCal. iCal is, I think, is a generic call dev server. And you see here, this is such a long time ago that, SSL was not even enabled by default, and now I would consider a crime not to have this forced on, yeah. But you can assign a cert here, and I'll test this later. On port 8443, that is fine. I guess the Mac clients are gonna get the configuration automatically. Really cool. You can avoid people attaching humongous documents to calendar entries. So 1 meg is fine. I mean, nowadays they'll probably do 10 megs, and the quota for calendar even 100 megs is actually a lot. I would force people to purge unless you really don't care about storage, yeah. But here, If you're running a company that relies on macOS like TZ, would probably be counting your disk space to at least slow the curve on which you start piling more and more Xserve RAIDs or whatever fiber channel DAS solution that you have. Yeah, I still have it to 50 nowadays if you are considering the megs attachments. Yeah, you can save the settings. Logs, there'll be nothing here yet, but I can start iCal. That's cool. Totally useless information. That's for a manager who asks, how many calendars people have here? We are adopting our new solution and it's so magic, it's the future. Yeah, and then they say, yes, we are handling thousands per week. Well, it won't start, I don't know why. No virtual host found. Well, whatever. iChat. So that is just, I think this is should be a Jabba server. You can have server-to-server federation, so instead of paying millions for Slack, which is a horrible useless tool in my opinion, you could just have your iChat domain, and that's compatible with third-party clients and works great. And it is running. Super easy. I wonder how much RAM this is eating, because in the past you could run a lot of stuff with 2 gigs of RAM, but nowadays you can barely turn your computer on. Let's see. Activity monitor. Let's go to system memory. I'm still only using 327 megs. There's some data cached, and I still have 1.18 gigs free. Unbelievable, right? I would not even turn the computer on with this memory nowadays. I hate how bloated software has become. Our next best here is mail. And this is something I really wanted to have had running back in the day, just because it's quite hard to set up a mail server properly, and based on the reviews I've seen from the era, this did a great job, right? So let's go through it. Can tell, overview will tell you if it's running, since when it's available, and the sub-services that are running. Yeah? So before we go into configuration, let's go to logs. Of course, nothing. Connections. This is going to give me the list of active connections, and this is actually great. Again, if you have a corporation, you're troubleshooting, you can quickly see who is using and help them figure out, like, if they're not hitting here, then you know the problem is elsewhere, right? So kind of thing that makes your life easier. Maintenance. Here you can see the accounts. This can probably go out of control very fast. Where the mail storage database is, and this is something that if you're running locally like this, you will need a lot of storage, and it's impossible to have any modicum of high availability with this setup. I really wonder what the clustering settings are, because they provide a lot of powerful services, but I don't see any way to have a proper uptime for maintenance. Mail queue, so probably this is what's being processed. Migration, if you're running macOS server before, you could import it here probably. And in settings, let's see, your domain, pre-populated. You need to enter the internet host name here, so you may have a service alias in your DNS. Enable POP, enable IMAP. You can enable SMTP. Well, you have to, otherwise you're not sending any mail. So, you can use a mail relay if you are counting on a third party to provide some services. You can send back error messages. Keep it on default settings for now. Relay. So I'm relaying SMTP only from the internal network. This will help with spam, yeah, so very good to have. For example, you can accept email only from your network, and then here, for example, you can have a whitelist based model that will whitelist your local networks and your, let's say, VPNs, right? Or you can blacklist abusive networks to give your users some more flexibility, or run a paid professional service. You could, right? And for blacklist, interesting how this would work. Help? Have no idea how you handle a mail rejection server. Let's see. Mail rejection server. RBL server. I'm going to look this up later. I'm very curious how this would work. Filters. Oh, I can, of course, this you must enable, right? Be very aggressive in filtering junk mail. If you have only these 4 languages, you are not covering your user base, but so you can consider languages out of your audience to be undesirable. So let's say Czech Republic would be welcome. Let's see, Russia would be, Portuguese would, and the rest more chance of spam. It's not bad actually if you're not running an international business. Although this list is very, very far from being extensive, and I'm sure we are offending a lot of people by having this. Slovak. Well, let's see, I'm gonna mark people who speak, or the languages people I know, you know. So let's see, I know someone who speaks Afrikaans, so yes. I know people who speak Arabic, I know people who speak Armenian, I know people who speak Belarusian, I know people who speak Chinese, also could be Mandarin or Cantonese, we don't know, right? I know Croatians, I know Danish, I know Dutch, English, I know Estonian, I know Finnish. Yeah, basically, for me this would not work. I know Georgians, I know Greek, I know Hungarians, I know Italians, I know Latin. You have a dead language and you don't have a lot of living languages here. This is awful. Why not? Can you manually enter the language codes? Maybe you can. Well, let's see. Continue this. All right. Yeah, you cannot type this manually. Alright, so we bounce junk messages. Actually, that causes more spam traffic and just delete them. I have no idea how scanning emails or viruses works. Aha, you update the virus database, and last time was in 2007. Well, I'm curious to see the latest one. Let's see quotas. Okay, 10 megs is correct. Let's go for 30. You can create an email if someone exceeds the quota. That's always useful. From me at boss.com. Clear your mail, please. Mailing lists. Aha, so for example, you could have an IT team helping support this. They would all run Macs and manage the services all through this, and someone would call, please create a mail list for me, and you could just do it, attach it to groups, I suppose. iPhone, whatever. Yeah, that would not be. I can choose what to log, and this is for sure they want to be logging debug, because you're going to be screwed. Yeah, too much information. You for sure want to archive the logs every day, especially if you have a busy server. I like that it explains really well what each level does. So for example, see warning, reports virus scan output, error data pass between scanning agents, critical, yeah, or debug, information, list message decomposition. This kind of thing that sometimes you are deploying something and it's hard to find the information on what this would cover, and this is very nicely summarized. And this is the part of experience using Apple that I actually like, even though they have been pissed me off recently and I'm planning to migrate to Linux. Not only for my servers, but for my workstation. So let's see this. Error. I/O errors including database failures or quota usage, protection mechanism failures, client activity timeouts, logs. That could be good in a high security environment where you need to audit user activity, information when people open the mailbox, duplicate delivery suppression, debug, everything. Advanced. We can support all methods because this is old anyway, and I can use my own cert, but for a test there will be nothing. Hosting. I'm hosting it here. You can host virtual domains, so you can provide services to many, mycompany.com, yourcompany.com, everyonescompany.com, and the server will accept and handle email. The database is local, and that's good. You can probably mount some NFS storage and have this hosted somewhere far, to save space. You probably have a NAS, and you can install different mailboxes in different parts of file systems. This is really cool. You can assign partition names, so you can have different groups. And if you have a company where it needs to store data locally for compliance, this is great. You can make sure that Germans store message in German servers, for example, and so on. And clustering, this is what I was looking for. I can create a mail cluster, and I'm for sure going to use this. Let's see what the automatic. accept everything in this wizard. Continue. Everything can be default for now. So probably when you run macOS using this like simple modes, that's probably what you do. Not bad. Of course, a user would not probably implement the security controls, but a newer version of this that enforces the security controls could really be great for Apple. I don't know why they don't do this anymore. Yeah, so now that I have a server, why can't I create a new cluster? Maybe I need to have another server. Oh, I know myself, I'm opening a can of worms. I'm gonna start buying old Macs and create a bloody macOS Leopard cluster for nothing. I'm gonna try this soon. MySQL. Well, that's a classic, and I'm actually curious if they would have a cluster for this, but that's allow connections. So so if I allow network connection, I probably can host an application somewhere else and just leverage the SQL server on the server. Setting the root passwords. I'm not going to do this, but it's awesome, and that's basically what most people do when they run a database. They just, create a root password, give access to everything on localhost and sometimes on remote, and which is the case here, right, with ES. I'm missing though different uses. If you just allow anything to use the same database and share the password, you're going to be very screwed. So this is not good enough, and I'm quite confident that the documentation will point you to some other configuration method. Let's see. Just go here, MySQL. MySQL. Working with MySQL. Setting up. Maybe you have to create a normal user account and it's gonna work. Okay, so basically, yeah, if you update beyond what Apple offers you, you're screwed. That's what it says here. Well, I will start. It's ancient, but let's have it. Is it gonna run? Okay, it started. Remember to set a password. Yes. Or you can run the secure installation, and that would probably break this interface here, but who cares? Service log, there is nothing. Net I can't do because, well, I have only one interface, right? But I can start the service to test. No, gateway setup assistant. So let's allow this. More info. Yes, so I'm not gonna do this because it's gonna screw up my network configuration. So net is gonna be when we run this on the Mac Pro. NetBoot. Wow, NetBoot macOS 9. I really wonder what Apple's gonna do with this. But let's set it up. This is another thing I really want to see working. So I will allow NetBoot on both Ethernet and Firewire, client data, and it will be both on Macintosh HD. I'll probably delete this later and create a new partition. 50 connections too optimistic for this setup, but here we are. And you can't use external volumes, which is sad. So here you would choose the images that I would have created in the system image utility, but I didn't finish running it. Yeah, so it's not here. Filters. Aha, then you can create a whitelist, so not anyone will. So basically, for example, you can add here only the machines that you allow in your company. These are gonna get images and others won't. Or how does it work? You can probably provide a file, or I have no idea. You can just get a list of, probably populate this automatically, I don't know. Logging, low, medium, or high. So we're gonna log all events. I'll save this, and let's see. Let's start. Okay, I need to share an image, so let's go back to this, clear this up. My God. It's like Windows Vista. Let's leave this creating an image on the background. And I will create a NetBoot image, so computer can boot all the way through. So that's how I'm gonna put up a second server. So let's do this. And I'm not gonna be serving this image from more than one server, but I can click here, why not? And I will let this run in the background while we proceed with our beauty. How much space do I have free? I have 16 gigs. Well, let's keep an eye on this. Alright, so we're gonna get back to this later. NFS. NFS is classic NFS. Let's see. 4 threads. No, let's do 2 per CPU. We can do TCP and UDP, no problem. Save this, and we can start. Funny that I get no option to export a volume or anything like that. Apple. Open directory. Let's see. My standalone server. So let's go one by one. Oh, I can change my role here, and that's what is in the beginning of the configuration. I could connect to a directory server or be my own. Not gonna go through this, not break anything or reboot. So let's go to LDAP. Okay, let's skip that. And here you have some policy, of course. Again, Microsoft has it far more complex, but you can disable login on a date. You can, block users depending on their mistakes or their lives. Password policy, so you can enforce complexity or reset. So this classic binding. You can encrypt the login information, block main in the middle, so that requires proper certs with proper names and so on. No client-side caching means that I think they have to log in all the time. And I think no one uses that because that would make your life miserable if you are on a laptop and lose connection. This is interesting, so you can have, instead of having HR managing a user directory, people can just update their lives here. Yeah. Let's see authentication. Yeah, so this is not a good hash method, not this, and none of this. I think these are all outdated. And this also, yeah, so here this is unusable anymore, you just can't. I'll play around in my local environment, but you don't want this. We have some things running here. I'll play with this a bit later, maybe in 6 months, when I create my super macOS Leopard test environment, but not now. You can create an archive probably to migrate. Whatever. Can't run this, so we skip. Podcast producer. So this is something that Apple used to have. So basically, and this is something that I really want to play with. It's something like maybe OBS, but you can set up a camera machine. Let's go to help so I don't say anything stupid. But this, I think this used to be something very cool and fascinating. Podcast producer. Yeah, you can set up and administer automated solutions for capturing, processing, and publishing video and audio. So you can record QuickTime movies, carry the movies, create web and iPod versions, so like transcode it and automatically. Yeah, so this you could create very complex workflows very easily. So let's see. Create a file system, so that's where everything is stored. Xgrid, so that's where you would probably transcode the content. Workflow properties, so managing cameras. I have no idea how this would work if you have multiple cameras connected to a computer. This is something that's completely mysterious to me. I will look it up later for more information. I cannot. What's a camera machine? So yeah, you can use scripts, you can use Quad Composer to process, you can create an iTunes page, where you have the server root where this gets published automatically. You can stream on RTSP. That's probably would be on your intranet, otherwise you're very, very screwed. On these days, with everyone working from home with 200 megabits internet connections, there is no way you can host kind of thing on your own. Cool. And when it goes to Xgrid, they probably get tied, properly matching the configuration, so jobs don't get lost or something. Cool, can I start? It's gonna fail probably. Could probably have like a place with millions of cameras capturing data, and no idea. I have no idea really. If you say, if you know anything, let me know in the comments below, and that would be very nice to know more about. How is our memory usage going? We still have 900 megs free. Can I see the memory? So let's go here, dock icon, show memory usage. Okay, this can go away. Okay. No luck. Let me quit this and come back. Are you going to crash? When we had only 2 CPUs, this was useful. Let's go back to Server Admin. Okay, so I restarted the Server Admin application and restarted the capture. I open here the floating CPU monitor and CPU history, just so you see that computers are much slower these days. Yes, so I could never have this in production during the day, you know, hosting services to 100 people, which would be reasonable at the time. A computer like this was expensive, right? And I could not create a server image and survive such high CPU loads. Yeah, it's crazy. It's just crazy. And today computers are so powerful, we rarely stop to appreciate it. But anyway, we are back, and now you get a summary of the services. So the services that I don't use, I would disable in the settings, right? And they would disappear from here. So you only actually see the status of the services that you actually use. Now you should have some graphs here. You have CPU and network traffic. We got some when we were downloading updates. And I think each service would have its own graph. So AFP got nothing, FTP got nothing, iChat doesn't have one, Mail doesn't have one, SQL has nothing useful. Anyway, back to print. I could perhaps install a printer here just to try. So I have my let's see if this is going to work. Let's save. Yeah, alright. My printer supports PostScript, so I got it working fine, which is fantastic. PostScript is an amazing old thing. And I can make my printer the default printer for the printing service. I can see debug log, debug 2 goes everything, debug 1 basic debug, information we have state changes, notice, temporary error, warn, errors and warnings, error, general errors, critical errors that don't prevent service run, alerts that must be handled immediately, emergency, prevents the service from on, none, low log. So let's just get critical. 1 meg is fine for print log. Let's see our queues. We have our queue set. Job status, there is none. If I go to logs here, I can see that the printer has been created. Apple Talk is disabled, there is an error. In overview, service is not running, I can start it. Wonderful. QuickTime Streaming. These I used to use and it was great, but now there are many different ways to do that. Right, and a lot of this is on the cloud anyway, so you would not host your own streaming service, only if you would be very crazy, right? So most of these runs in AWS or Azure, and only if your workforce has very limited remote work needs that you would run this. I don't see that. This is from a different area, yeah? Logs will be none. Can get average of connected users or throughput, who is connected where now, and packet loss, which is interesting, and you don't actually have this kind of data easily viewable when you're hosting this kind of service. How many users, how many relays. So you can probably relay content for others, and this is interesting. I built this using Nginx a while ago. What you do is you have basically some servers that are just relaying content from others, and you can basically, instead of, for example, having 10 connections between your office and your data center, you have one connection between the office and your data center, and then 10 or 20 users log into the local relay. Yeah, so I'm allowing only 50 megabits, which is kind of low. It would be like 10 users these days, not 1,000, right? So let's say 10 users. Yeah, bloody hell, 5,000 users, 100 megabits, just really old school content. You're saving locally, right? I don't need a broadcast, don't need a password. And this is cool because, oh, web UI. Admin, 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 cool. I would like to see this web UI. Later, I guess. I may have to go back and deep dive into each one of these services someday. So when you accept incoming broadcast, so someone who is streaming a video will stream to you, and then you stream to the other relays and to the end users, right? Instead of only running local content, yeah. So you set a password, so whoever is streaming has permission to stream, and here you can see it's old school, you have only one user, yeah. You can stream your own folder if you like with this option. IP binding, so this you would use, well, if you're building a streaming server, for example, you get a Mac. Here would be a Mac Pro or a G5 and Tower, right? And add like 16 network interfaces to it. The default not handle because PCI bus has only 133. I think PCI 64-bit X does like 300 or 400 megabytes per second. But here you would, for example, have at the time 8 gigabit interfaces plus the 2 on the machine, right? And then you bind everything and just stream all the things. And here you can add your relays, right? You can be requesting a stream or do announced or unannounced UDP. And this is something that I did manually in Nginx, as I mentioned. It's really cool to see a very simple web interface for that. And then you can have the destination and sources, and you can see what's going on. You can keep an access log for accounting later on if you want to see who used what. Right. Is this still doing anything? But well, that will be it. It's going to take me so long to edit this thing. I'm already seeing that because I show up my host name all the time and I have to clean this up. Let's start. See what happens. It runs. Radius. Radius is something that I actually was very curious to run on my wireless network. But I never got to it because it's complicated, or I have the impression that it's complicated, but Apple has it simple, yeah? So you basically, instead of giving people a password to use your Wi-Fi or even to connect to LAN, I think is also supported. You can choose who can do it, right? And the credentials pass through, and you can allow them to access some services or not. And access filtering happens via radius. Yeah, so here, as you can see, I can track file that sync the mobile home, so I'm tracking the files that are created or not. I can allow SNMP, SSH, right? It's cool. Oh, actually said shit. Wait, radius, right? So radius allows you to control access to your network, not using like a pre-shared key, for example, for Wi-Fi, but by using the radius service, yeah. And it's in this case attached to your wireless network. I think this works as well with wired LAN, I'm not sure. But what happens is, I have some base stations here, I'll try this again later. But you can associate the base stations here, and then instead of people having to log in, if they are part of your network, like logged into your Open Directory, they should be able to connect without having to know the password. And if someone leaves the company, for example, then they lose access to your network automatically. I have an airport station that I'll try later on. But for now, this is probably not going to work for anything, because I think the way Apple did it is that they push the configuration to the base stations. I think something has to happen on their end as well. But I can enable the service to see if it will run. Probably not. Oh, it is. And now I'm using more than half of the memory. Samba. If you are hosting files to Windows machines, you're going to use that. We have number of connections. You can see who is connected. You can be a standalone server or join. It can be a domain controller. That sounds too much like NT4. It can be a backup domain controller. It can be a domain member. You can allow guest access. You really don't want NTLM. 100 clients is super optimistic for this machine. You can choose the log level, and again, Apple explains very well what they do, which is great. And in advanced, code page for the Share? Why? You can register with a Win server for like old school Windows networking. And let's see, I save this. Let's start and see what happens. Yeah, so the NetBoot started. Ancient Samba. Cool. Software update. So this is another thing that, for example, you would run at home. For example, if you have this old airport that shares connection via dial-up, then you're completely screwed if everyone's downloading updates via your dial-up network, or if you have an office and too many machines are downloading updates. So what you can do is you can actually keep the updates stored locally, right? And then basically the first update triggers the download, it gets stored locally on the server, and the next users are gonna retrieve the update from your local server, right? And that saves you precious bandwidth. So if I click here, I don't even know how it's. I really think that I would need to trigger an update. Not now. VPN. VPN allows two insecure options. I think HTTP is also insecure these days. And let's see, yeah, you can do HTTP over IPsec, so you can grant people a network range. Load balancing, that's good, so if you have another server, you can just configure that. I don't see an option for a virtual IP, so I don't know how it works. And the authentication can be your directory service, unfortunately not with Kerberos, or you can use Radius, right? IPsec can be done via secret or using a certificate. IPsec, I always struggled with it. It was always giving me random errors when I was using this Cisco small business, this old, they bought this Netgear or whatever company it was. And I always struggled. When I got it working, I didn't want to touch it for a decade. You can configure those here. PPTP, don't use it, it's insecure. Apple removed, I think they removed it from macOS like already 5 or 6 reviews ago. You see, standard VPN on Windows not very secure, and even less secure with 40-bit encryption keys. Alright, so no. Alright. Client information, so then you can push to the client's specific DNS service and search domains, and you can push a routing table, so some things will go through the tunnel and maybe other things go straight to their network, to the local network. Two options of logging, and that would be it. And I will try it also when I have a second interface. Web. Ancient Apache. Cool that you can see the throughput, and I really don't know how to see the throughput in Apache these days. If you know, please leave a comment. In logs, your classic access, error logs, and so on. In graphs, you have the number of requests or the throughput. In sites, this is really cool. it's probably a very nice interface to creating this configuration files, yeah, in Apache. I'm actually later on gonna dig deeper into this and look at how they look like. It probably creates some .conf files in Apache, but it would be interesting to see how it's formatted, if it has some comments saying that yes, this was created by Apple Server Admin utility or whatever. So let's see the site here. Yeah, so yeah, those are the Apache classic settings there. So let's see here. I don't allow for the listing, WebDAV, CGI because SSIs. Ugh, no. Yeah, allowing override. That's all classic. Spotlight searching. How? How do you spotlight search in Apache? Hold on, I'm curious about it, so I'm going to enable this, and realms. Authentication for Apache is something that I never got my head around getting to work. So that will be very interesting to figure out. And yeah, I need to dig this into this later, because I'll probably be able to learn new things about Apache here. Security, SSL. Okay. It does the port switch automatically. Cool. Aliases. Can use it. I can create reverse proxies. It can even do balancing with the load factor, the root. Look, you can pick up identifiers for the sticky sessions. Terrific, quite complete. You can allow webmail and blog. Here's what it creates. I'm going to just turn everything on. Or no, not now. Not now. Let me save. Only keep it with Spotlight. And let's enable to see what happens. It's running already. It's still starting up. The CPU is so busy that the whole thing is timing out. Let's go to the activity monitor. Oh, it's open here. It's creating the image. And the software update sync service is also doing its job. Let's see what I can do. Okay, I can stop this for now. Start web. Okay, so Apple has customized the home page. Looks very pretty. I like this design, and it runs well in old browsers. If I go to groups, nothing, uses nothing, webmail, nothing, because not configured, but I should be able to go to Spotlight. This is so cool. This is incredible. A web hook for Spotlight. Fast. Let's try to look for. You can probably only look inside the web page, but this is great. Unbelievable. Look at this. This reminds me, you know, I was running Xcloud and I had this thing running on, I think it's Elasticsearch, to index my documents on my Nextcloud server, and it's painful to get running, and this is beauty. Very, very cool. Well done, Apple. Why did you stop with things that are good? So let's go here to Web Services. And here, if you want to provide webmail, blog, and everything to everyone, you can. And you don't have to do any work to maintain. I mean, unless until Apple decides to stop the service. Should have a graph here. I got some throughput. Yes, and requests. Yes, I'm popular. Let's see this. Wow, this is cool. Okay, this is not coming yet. Let me refresh this page. It says that blogs are disabled. Why? Let's try again. Settings. Modules. Aha! Easy way to enable modules. HFS Apple module. I wonder how many millions of security holes these have now. Ah, Tomcat. Just a click. So webmail is not up yet, but groups are, and users are. I can create my weblog. Let's see if it works. Built-in authentication. Is this WordPress? Spotlight search. My blog. Settings. Is this WordPress? Ancient? Maybe not. I like the built-in authentication. It's really cool. Help. Huh. Fascinating. Enough of this. It is running. I can play around later. WebObjects. So WebObjects, I think it was a platform for creating interactive pages, and I think the Apple Store, for a long time after Apple had stopped selling WebObjects, was still built on it. And I think you can use to create very complex web applications at the same time. But I honestly have no idea how it works. It just runs. In Xgrid, that's the distributed computing service I told you about before, and that can basically, I don't need authentication, for example, and I will always accept tasks. And then I can be a controller without authentication, which means that if I have another server, which I hopefully will later on, I can can try to build a cluster of something. I have no idea what you can run, but I'll be able to. So I have 1.373 gigahertz available, and that's how VMware counts available speed. That where just counts the frequency of CPUs, which is completely retarded. So if I come with my Mac Pro 1.1 here, this is gonna go up to around 80. I have no idea what is compatible with this. I'm gonna have to look it up. And this, it's running a background installation of macOS for NetBoot. This is going to take forever. So I will leave you here now, and I'll demonstrate the rest of the services later on. But it was fascinating to go through this. I had this on my list for years, and I finally got to have a look. And Apple, what a great product for like small to medium business that you had here. And if you could update this to the cloud, if you could run your own easy to manage and secure cloud based on this, you will make so much money and sell more expensive machines. But well, you didn't, and it's a shame compared to the newest versions of Server before the final discontinuation of this application. I have it running on my Mojave machine, and it's just, you can create iPhone images or distributed compiling for Xserve or whatever that is, but not. In any case, I'll leave this running. It was a pleasure, and I will see you next time.